while all these automated tools are quite interesting from a technical perspective, very little of that is visible with our users at the moment. But what we do to keep up with that is, of course, number one, learn about it all, use it, find the flaws. Usually when you look at some systems or some components or some technologies and you know something about the flaws there, you have an idea of what a problem could be that you fix.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Christoph Cemper back with us for a third time. He was here in 2017, if you can believe it. That's a long time ago. We spoke quite a bit about link building and link analysis, his amazing link research tools, tool set. Back in episode 89 was part one. That's a long time ago in internet years. Well, besides being the founder of Link Research Tools and Link Detox, which is really the premier link detoxification platform, which is part of Link Research Tools, he's also the founder of AIPRM, which is hugely successful in a very short period of time, riding on the coattails of ChatGPT and its rise in usage and common use around the world, 100 million users plus in such a short period of time. Well, Christoph's riding that train with his new platform called AIPRM. We'll talk about that, but we're going to also talk about just AI and where it's heading, and because he's on at the coalface of all this. Developing software, figuring out new ways of prompting ChatGPT. We're going to just really geek out on generative AI and where things are heading and how it can apply to marketers. Christoph, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a while, and I really look forward to our chat because we know each other for quite some time, and I look forward to talking about AI, which has been strong force, not just in the market, but also for myself to learn and educate myself in the last years.
Yeah, and your roots are in software development when you were like a kid or something. Can you quickly share the story of how you started as I think a teenager to write code and all that?
It all started in 1985 with a Commodore 64 for computer games. I got it for Christmas, and I think that same night I already wrote my first basic program because I kind of learned and practiced that in other computers, back then in computer stores after school. And that is really something that I enjoyed my whole teenage years, not just as a hobby, but that became a profession with a partner that was a little bit older than me and kicked my ass to get things done. Finished. Getting to 80, 90, 95, even 99% is possible. But the really hard part is finishing up, doing the sales. Back then, we finished games and sold them to publishers. And that meant quality assurance and testing and the contracts and all sorts of stuff that are not as fun as creating code.
It's funny that you mentioned getting 95%, even 99%. And I just learned this concept and it's a game changer. It will change my life. I'm quite certain of it. And it's called the spiritual flywheel. And you can apply it to business. And the person I learned this from is David Guillaume, who's a very successful entrepreneur. He and his wife own Mary Ruth's Organics, which is a big brand with, 25 million customers. It's very popular on Amazon. It's in all the different kind of Whole Foods stores, et cetera, here in the US, and I believe they're in other countries as well. He's very successful. And when he talks about concepts relating to Kabbalah and business, because he's a Kabbalah teacher and a Kabbalist, I definitely pay attention. So this spiritual flywheel is where you get momentum, because a flywheel, when it really gets going, it keeps going. The momentum keeps it going. But it's hard to get it started. So he talked about how getting from, let's say, 0 to 95% of a project complete, it just seems to work and you don't get really waylaid or sidetracked in the same way as you do in the last 5%. It's like the dark forces all working to sidetrack you in the very tail end of the project, because that's where all the juice is. So he's like, if you gain 95 units of energy, of light from above, from the heavens, for getting to 95% of the project done. So 95 units of energy for 95%. It's not an extra 5 units of energy to get to that remaining 100%, last 5% done. It's like 10,000 units of energy. So it's immeasurably powerful to just complete stuff, even if you're not that passionate about it, if you're most of the way done. Because another way to think about it is you can't drive traffic over a bridge that is 99% complete. It has to be fully complete to safely put cars on that bridge. So just finish the dang thing. And if you don't want to finish it, don't keep it hanging around, because that actually sucks energy. All these uncompleted projects suck energy. So you just kill it. You never think about it ever again. You have to make a decision, and that's hard. I'm a kind of a hoarder when it comes to projects and ideas. I have a whole ton, like, I don't know, 6,000 to-dos in my to-do list. It's pretty insane. And it's all draining my energy instead of giving me energy, because I don't finish these things. And it's like, for me, this will be a game changer, this spiritual flywheel, getting in there and finishing stuff that is mostly done. But then the things that I'm no longer passionate about, to completely kill them, delete them from my to-do list. That's going to be a game changer. What are your thoughts on that?
I remember the whole GTD thing and to-do lists, and using approximately 30 different to-do apps or project management apps, or project task trackers. And like in software development, Jira is very popular, of course, in bigger teams. You have to have a way to take all these notes and manage them. But the truth is, after some years, it just becomes a huge digital symmetry. It's complete trash and takes so much energy to find the good stuff in there that I killed off even the last software development project management tool, which was UTrack. I mean, not killed off, it as archived to search for, why did we decide that way? But for 2 years or so, I skipped all that and went back to simple Slack, which is, of course, not a project management tool. Come on. But it naturally makes things that are not as important disappear. Things come back to you if they're important.
Yeah, it's like to-do list bankruptcy, right?
Exactly. And I don't have a to-do list except, when there are some, let's say you have to finish your books in accounting and you have like 5 items where you have to find the receipts or stuff like short-term notes, but not the to-do list for my life, not the to-do list for my business. That's all a fad. And I wasted so much time. Inbox zero is just the next fad, just like that. Of course, you can try to get there, but what's the reward really? Could try to answer to everyone really quick. Why? It wasn't like that in earlier times. And in a way, all of that takes energy and does not reward sufficiently. And as you said, those last 5% take maybe 10,000 units or 10,000 energy units, or I don't recall the comparison. That is 100% true. And what you need in this phase, you need so much energy because it means saying no all the time. And not just to your employees or your customers, we want this feature and that feature. You have to say no to yourself. You have to cut back on your own requirements, on your own standards, so to say. You cannot get finished if you want to have everything perfect. You're the perfectionist, the opposite of getting done, or whatever that saying is. And you have to make those sacrifices that suck.
Perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah, exactly. And that is painful, especially if you're, enjoy delivering good work. Some of that stuff is not good if you get to 100%, not good by your standards. But the solution to that is discovering that only you yourself see the difference. And you show this to random people, you show this to customers, you show this to your boss, or she doesn't even notice the difference, doesn't even mention it. Maybe doesn't even look at what kept you up at night. What is the difference? Unfortunately, a lot of people who do not have the switch to change it to this is good enough. It's the good enough mentality. And this is not delivering crap or subpar results. It's about letting go your thoughts of what is still to do. And that's why a to-do list is so tough for getting anything out the door.
Yeah, I remember Tony Robbins explaining that the perfectionist has no standards. It's the same as having impossibly high standards is the same as having no standards at all. And the reason why is because you get nothing done either way.
That's a good point, yeah.
But what the spiritual flywheel thing is, what this is describing though is, yes, it takes discipline and energy to get to the finish line, to fully complete the project so that it ships. It's got to ship. If it doesn't ship, it didn't count. You got to cross that finish line. And if you don't cross to that finish line, you've expended all this effort and it's still draining energy because you haven't completed the task or the job that you were set out to do to actually ship the product. Once you do, then all of that energy releases like it's a boulder at the top of the mountain, and you just gave it that push, and now it's turned, that potential energy that was stored in the boulder has turned into kinetic energy, and you are on fire. You are just unstoppable.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's talk about AI. I don't want to get too far into the philosophy, but let's talk about AIPRM and how that kind of connects to your roots as a software developer. You're a successful entrepreneur and have a really great team and great reputation, great brand. I've been referring folks to Link Research Tools for well over a decade. And wow, what a significant shift or pivot to go after this whole ChatGPT thing with AIPRM. So can you talk a bit about how that all came about?
Yeah. So we started with the generative AI about more than a year ago. In April 22, GitHub Copilot came out and we tested that, and it was magic. It was free, it was magic, and I couldn't wait to pay those $10 because of whatever limitation. I think it was too slow back then in the beginning. But we used it in software development from day one. While it was based on the Codex model from OpenAI, the results were exciting already with the suggestions and the feeling, changing the feeling that you suddenly have a pair programmer with you, that you have someone suggesting things, was irritating me. Like you type some code and then you get this little blurry suggestion that in the beginning was annoying as hell to me. I was close to turning it off, but I went through that, got more productive, used the same APIs for some SEO specific tasks, some libraries already built, some tools, some functionality in Link Research Tools that was close to shipping, but not done yet. I mean, parts of the user interface were missing. So if normal user can't use it and needs to give me a call to run it on the server, it's not done. It's not 99%, it's 80. But that's when ChatGPT came out, and I used it for a month or so until end of December, along with Midjourney, and then beginning of January, I had this collection of prompts in text files. I had dozens of source files with my prompts in there, and I saw all these AI influencers, so to say, that were pitching and selling their prompt lists, Excel lists with each prompt being one line or maybe two sentences, something like, write me a book that I can sell on Amazon, not a specification of what needs to be done. So not a real prompt by my standards. I was wondering what the fuss about all that is, that they went through the roof. And I started thinking to myself, hey, where are the people that work like me, that use a prompt of 20, 50, or 100 lines of code, because prompts are the new source code, in my opinion. Where are these people They're not on Twitter. They're not on LinkedIn. I post something on Facebook. I get 2 likes. So where are all these people? And that's where the idea of having an AI prompting community or an AI prompt marketplace or a professional marketplace, something where people like me would share their prompts. Where's that? And nothing like that was around. And so AIPRM, it started on January 8th, 6 months ago, with 10 hard coded prompts, my favorite SEO prompts in the SEO space. But when it had 20,000 users 3 days later, I realized this is serious stuff and this could work. So we built that database functionality, so to say, that the whole marketplace is running on a large server cluster now, with essentially being a Reddit for AI prompts, with voting and downvoting and blacklisting and duplicate content detection, like in Google, all these things that we know from search engines. It's a search engine for prompts as well. Was around mid of January already, and this is it. People came, and people that were writing good prompts published them just like I did. And of course, there are some copycats and people who jumped that on that idea as well. But I think nobody really got enough.
Where do you think this is heading with prompts being the new source code, as you said? What about tools like GPT Engineer, which will write whole software packages? I don't know that software developers will have a job.
I thought about that a lot. I thought about, what should I tell my kids to study, or what would be the education, what would be the work for them, or anyone really in our industry, or all the smart people, that the white collar workers, so to say. Prompt development here is really just a bridge. When you run GPT Engineer, for example, you can give it some better or worse prompt. You can give it some specific details, like I write a 10, 20 lines of specification. Or you can actually give it something like, I want a computer game with asteroids that I want to control with my mouse. And when you do that, what it does is it generates a questionnaire. It prompts you and asks you questions that it thinks could be relevant to the problem. So it's like a prompt generator or a prompt development tool. I have to say, I really like it, because it reminds me a little bit on these old computer games where you had to type in instructions, the Commodore 64. So should we have this? Should we have that? What do you think about these 17 options that I came up with? So it's really fun to work with it, but it's so much work still to specify what you actually want. And there's a bunch of people who spread the idea that prompts are a temporary thing and that they won't be necessary in the future. Well, my take on that is there will always be a requirement for someone who wants something to specify that in a clear, workable, executable way. Write me a book that I can sell on Amazon. It's not that class of specification. So either it's guided requirements analysis, or someone who's able to collect his requirements, to abstract problems, can describe this as a prompt engineer, as we call it today, or some system needs to collect this information. And this system can be machine driven, or it can be a bunch of requirements engineers that still ask customers, what do you want, like they do it today. And that can be semi-automated. But in the end, and even without an AI, even if you have humans sitting there, you need to say what you want, and you need to say it right. It needs to be a car that is blue. Otherwise, you get a red one or a green one. And then people are all frustrated about it not being the way they imagine. So the transformation from our requirements, from our wishes, from our dreams that we want to achieve cannot be removed. Midjourney does it in an interesting way. You type some words, minimum, and you get 4 suggestions. So you get 4 images and you let people pick. So that's a little bit like GPT Engineer that also asks you, or Auto GPT or Baby AGI. They all have these loops. And now a code interpreter from ChatGPT can do that as well. It can ask you all these questions and iteratively, in an iterative fashion, get to a better specification of what needs to be done, what the output should be. We will never be happy if we just get some output. Yeah, that's the problem with all the ChatGPT haters. Oh, I typed in my problem and the output was terrible.
There's an old adage in programming, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
What's AIPRM going to do to kind of stay ahead of what's happening with GPT Engineer and Auto GPT and all these other things that are, and it's such a moving target.
It absolutely is, but we're in the best position because we have all the people building the prompts, revising the prompts. All the lists that I mentioned in the beginning, they're static. They're a week old, they're 2 weeks old. And we not only see the usage of what people are working on, I mean, not the actual chat content, but we see the prompts they're using. Do they work on marketing personas? Do they work on programming? And we have 1.6 something million, 1.65 million users. We have a huge traffic influx of these stats. So we see what people are doing and how often they're doing that. While all these automated tools are quite interesting from a technical perspective, very little of that is visible with our users at the moment. But what we do to keep up with that is, of course, number one, learn about it all, use it, find the flaws. Usually when you look at some systems or some components or some technologies and you know something about the flaws there, you have an idea of what a problem could be that you fix. So the original AIPM was really the problem. Me sitting there thinking about, I got this magic machine, I got this ChatGPT machine on the other end, and here I'm handling a bunch of text files in my text editor. This can't be real. I'm replacing variables in there by hand. So that's a simple UI feature from the beginning. And what we see right now is that AIPM users have very basic needs for customizing the output to their business or to their profession or to their product. For example, we got this feature where you can give AIPRM a profile or multiple profiles where I could work as Christoph personally. I could work as Christoph for Link Research Tools. I could work as Christoph for AIPRM, which is that company not in Austria, Europe, but in Delaware, founded in 2023 with this and this and this. So all this context information I can now switch with one drop down and pass this on to anything I do with ChatGPT and any prompt, which means it will never come back with generic answers when it comes to filling in a company name or my name. When you work on emails, you don't get something that you still need to post-process, but you get very detailed, targeted, personalized results already. And this is what a lot of users struggle with, or still struggle with, or don't know they can do. I mean, it sounds a little bit scary to give the thing more personalized information, data protection, personal and all that, but we're talking about product names, we're talking about abbreviations, we're talking about your actual precise spelling of the trademark that needs to be used. You don't want to edit all these details in the output. So passing that to ChatGPT, and I'm saying ChatGPT here because it's the big one right now. AIPRM has other plans and other backends, but there are a couple tools where you could give an API key or where you could connect to some, let's say, lesser known engine. And that's all interesting. But there's no users there. I mean, not the broad users. We're targeting small businesses, not AI engineers. We're talking to lawyers, dentists, plumbers, doing the work, so they don't need to have the web girl do it or the social media guy do it. They're just writing their own tweets or stuff like that. That is where I see a huge potential still. With all the developments, there's huge potential of people being kind of scared. I'm a lawyer, so I must be a good writer. I don't need someone else to write for me. But something similar was thought maybe when spell checkers were introduced, in our text processing systems, correcting the grammar, correcting the Oxford comma, stuff like that. Back then in the 90s, or 80s, that was probably scary too. And the transition hasn't happened yet, and it won't happen very fast. People will slowly get accustomed to the power of AI helping them, just like for text processing or correcting, expanding that. And
Yeah. Do you think AIPRM could be essentially like Grammarly tagged on to a Microsoft Word, but you're attached to whether it's ChatGPT or Google Bard or Bing Chat or whatever? It's that essential or near essential layer that helps the marketer or a small business owner to leverage the power of ChatGPT or whatever the generative AI platform is.
yeah. And we also launched at end of June, short before the holiday week, AIPRM everywhere, where at least in the browser, you can use your favorite prompts just with a right click or context menu click. You select some text or you activate the live crawl and TLDR prompt or function to crawl the page that you're actually on at the moment and give you a 5 bullet summary of the highlights in there. So that's there already.
That reminds me of the Ghost Reader feature in Readwise Reader. So it will summarize the page that you've added to Readwise Reader, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I don't know that app, but makes total sense. And it's something that you would maybe want to automate for everything if you have a Read Later app. But again, we're talking about the average Joe that doesn't have a Read Later app, that has AIPRM next to Google Translate. Just like you mark some text in Polish on a website and translate it to English with one click, you do exactly that with AIPRM already. But maybe condense it or expand it or maybe translate it or really everything that ChatGPT can do or other LLMs will be able to do. So we're running on ChatGPT now because that's the huge viral platform that everyone is on. But AIPRM is really more than that. And even inside ChatGPT, we got GPT 3.5, GPT-4, GPT-4 with code, and then GPT-4 with browsing that they took offline again. At prompting, having a good prompt requires the prompt, but also the right model. So learning and testing in the future, automatically testing the quality of all these prompts against all these different large language models is what AIPRM is built for, and what we're doing already in a way, to give users the chance to have a successful experience. Yeah? There's a lot of prompts. If you run them against the wrong model, the output is just not good. Or
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of is a tool that I've used to get health insurance and travel insurance. It's called Squaremouth. If you go to, let's say, a travel insurance website, they'll give you a quote and you can buy your insurance. But if you go to Squaremouth, it will show you all these reviews and ratings, and you can see you can filter and make different decisions around what coverage you want. Does travel insurance require, let's say, baggage insurance and medical insurance? Do you need to be escorted out of the country to a more suitable hospital if there's a big problem? Is that included, to what limits, et cetera? So you can make all these decisions around what your coverage requirements are, and then it will narrow it down to just those insurance options that are meeting your criteria, and then you can buy the insurance right through their platform. So I see AIPRM kind of in a similar way of being able to provide that independent assistance in selecting the right model, the right prompts, the right maybe community.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, the community aspect where the authors have their profiles in AIPRM and then run some own Patreon there for users of their prompts is, so to say, a sub community, or on Reddit it would be a subreddit. We haven't supported that in any structural fashion yet, but it really comes down to the question, how many plumbers in the US are good prompt writers today, are really proficient? We have some really smart guys in the customer base, but it needs some momentum for every vertical or every industry. And I could envision that AIPRM would provide that space, so to say, for those industries or industry leaders or industry experts to fine tune that for their community or for their industry. That's something that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's a really great idea to allow prompt engineer who's just a solopreneur to set up shop and turn that into a money-making venture without having to go onto a freelancer website and offer their services. They could get supporters like Patreon has.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a prompt base, one prompt marketplace where you can buy a prompt for a couple dollars. And some others are picking up on the idea that someone would go and buy a prompt here and buy a prompt there. And that's the reason why I built AIPRM. Just the prompt source code itself is valuable, but you don't want to engage in these microtransactions. People need more than that. And that's what we're working on, providing not a service, but providing something of a lot more value than just having a prompt. As you can imagine, we got a couple people copying our stuff and cloning the whole thing. On Apple, there's a guy who thinks copying our logo one by one is not a copyright, not a trademark violation. And I think so. We got a lot of stuff going on from these free riders, which is something that the lawyers are happy about. And when they get taken down, they're not so happy about that. But essentially, that's not all that you see. And I envision AIPRM as being a professionals marketplace or a professional community where it's not just about the prompts, but it's about the people doing stuff in there. And that's developing quite nice. I can see that getting more relevant and more important over time as more average shows, as I call them, take that step to try things. We're all geeks. A lot of the users of AIPRM are geeks and technology people, marketing people that are used to trying stuff. But I want to enable this conversion from a problem to a solution via a prompt for normal people that cannot express themselves well enough. If you want a prompt generator as well, but you cannot solve everything with code. The GPT expert is one example that tries to come up with an approach, but I can guarantee you, I'm sure there will be few plumbers that sit there for half an hour to tell the machine how it should really do the thing. And you cannot shortcut this collection process. It's cool that you can do this, but nobody sits in front of a computer for 30 minutes just to tell it what the output should be. So this whole moderation, creation, testing, quality assurance, detection of prompt drift. This is our job. You cannot put this in an Excel sheet or some machine.
So this is the first time I've heard that term, prompt drift. Can you define that for our listener?
Prompt drift describes the problem that you write a prompt, the language model that you prompt with it behaves differently over time. So for example, for ChatGPT, they had a release in March. Then they have an official release in June 13, I think. But when you open ChatGPT in July, you still see something about a date in May. So I still don't know exactly which model they have underneath ChatGPT compared to the models that you can run via API, but they all provide sometimes very different results for the same version. And nobody has this under control and nobody talks about that because it's really rendering the product large language model very risky. When you develop software and you use a large language model, you develop prompts for it. If then a new version comes around, like that recent OpenAI June version, and they announce that they will turn off the old model because it's just very costly to run or to keep, even to keep. It means you need to fix your software. You need to adapt your software. It's like someone pulls the rug under your software. It's like, if you had based your marketing strategy on Google Plus, and then Google comes around and says, you know what, we don't want to run a social media thing anymore, gone. It's not that harsh, but it's close to it. And I heard some cases of really frustrated companies or programmers or developers in companies. And prompt drift describes how the output drifts away from your original one, or just changes, or just gets broken. Just today, I was testing something, a complex thing against the OpenAI API, and it just came back with gibberish stuff, like unusable. It's not written differently. It's broken suddenly, and that is something that nobody has under control right now. Not OpenAI, and nobody's monitoring that except maybe AIPRM. And when we do that, we can not only tell our users, well, this prompt is not up to date, we could even take them down like we do for anti-spam. We also do this for anti-prompt drifting, so to say, very soon, which is not easy, but somebody has to do it.
So that reminds me of something that you created a long time ago, a metric and link research tools called link velocity trend, LVT. And that was such an important metric to add to the SEO community, to the discipline of SEO, so that people could see how their link velocity was dropping off and how the search engines almost certainly were tracking that too, and seeing how you were no longer really relevant to the global conversation anymore like you used to be. And now with prompt drift, by measuring that and having a metric for that, you could be the leader in this generative AI field in terms of making sure stuff still works and doesn't break. Like, it's like Windows 95 suddenly gets deprecated and your whole software is written on Windows 95 and it doesn't work on the new version of Windows. Your whole business is in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a problem that developers have today for their prompts, for their systems, that users will have as well. And there was some personalized AI product where people could have fake friends or AI friends or something like that. That changed overnight, where some people essentially lost a friend, where the way it responded back to them based on the history, based on the time invested with this AI friend, seemed lost. Yeah, and maybe this was overly dramatic, and I didn't follow through with all the details on that one. But it comes down to the problem that underneath the database was changed. It's just switching from one database to the other one without being able to test all the millions or trillions of possible outcomes. And I don't know if OpenAI has this on the radar, but because there's no solution, I think they might have it on their radar with a don't talk about it thing. Just like Google doesn't want to talk about links, right? It's still the one thing that matters so much and is so easy to manipulate. I mean, when I say easy, I mean it's still possible. It's not like 20 years ago, which would be surprising. But it's still the one thing that matters on the web, content and links. And when you have content and links, you can look at a link graph. You can look at how many other websites or people point to it. Of course, if there are spam links, you need to discount them. That's not really innovative in 2023. But the large language model operators, they also crawl the web. Now, what do you think how they are scoring their documents? Of course, they can calculate a lot of in-document metrics like TF-IDF, a document, word frequencies, and things like that, can extract some entities from there. But when it comes to the question of how popular is this document, what are they going to do? And maybe they're using the PageRank from 1998 formula at least. But somehow this machine needs to get some input on how important is it to be able to give it more weight. All these weights are similar weights needed for a search engine. And if you want the ChatGPT or all these other large language models, well, they have a different form. It's not like a search index with an inverse index on the documents that you can search by words. But the original input is exactly the same, the web and information by humanity. So maybe Midjourney scanned all the comic books out there and gave it some, I don't know, deviant artwork websites to suck in with a lot higher priority. Maybe OpenAI and ChatGPT did some manual tweaking to give government sites and EDU sites more weight when it comes to the trust that they give these documents. But these concepts of what is probably the right information cannot be distilled out of the information itself, right? And so This is something I don't see anyone publishing because on the one hand, it's very, I would say, a trade secret, how you do that. A very important trade secret. Just like we don't know about the exact filters between the OpenAI API and ChatGPT, having all these security measures when it says, I cannot respond to you back on legal or health topics. It's exactly the same things that Google has to do with the data. So in a way, it's very similar to all my work on linked research tools also when it comes to trying to find out, trying to reverse engineer it, if you want. Prompt engineering is something like that, change the input a little bit and see what comes back. And in a way, this reminds me about SEO in 2003, where whatever you did on the website, whatever you did with links, you could see results. Well, sometimes in hours or maybe the next day.
Yeah, you could reverse engineer what was working and what didn't.
And we're there now with AI models, if you want. This will not remain as it is because it's too easy to see, too easy to find out still.
Yeah, to reverse engineer. Yeah. These platforms need to keep it a black box to create a moat, a durable competitive advantage.
Yeah. Which is interesting because Facebook, the Llama LLM leaked. It got stolen. And then the next day, Zuck wakes up and say, okay, we're going to open source it all and it's all free for everyone, which is interesting. It's an interesting reaction, not the only possible reaction because everybody had it on his hard disk already from the torrent. So everyone has been using it anyways. But what they did not open source is how they got there. How did they train it? And that's maybe where they said, you know what, you can have this. This is from 2020. We got our own better one, and let the academic society and the open sources play with this while we learn from their findings, while we use our modern ones. Maybe, something like that would make sense.
Yeah, interesting times for sure. So I know we're out of time here. So I want to ask you two real quick questions before we wrap. One is a ChatGPT API key required in order to use AIPRM? And the second one is there a way to feed your personal database of all the stuff that you've created? I mean, the listener, the viewer, can they upload that somewhere, still have it somewhat private or hopefully not getting leaked by OpenAI, and then have that be the basis for a whole bunch of output from ChatGPT?
Yeah, like I said, we have this profile info. Well, the API key you don't need because you're just using the standard ChatGPT. There will be other use cases in the future where you need an API key, but those are not released yet. When it comes to the personalization, the data that you pass to ChatGPT today is still very limited. But of course, having a whole repository of all your company documents or all your company contracts is the use case that we are prepared to ship, to deliver. With the product development at that scale, it's really hard to ship things in a way that doesn't break the user experience. So for example, it takes 2 to 3 weeks, let's say 3 weeks, until everyone gets a bug fix that we do in the extension. So with that being said, every move that we make, a lot riskier. It's, oh my God, having to wait for weeks until everyone has a bug fix and answering support questions for the 3 weeks for what is already fixed is really annoying. Yeah, but that's how these extensions work. But I have some solutions for that, and we're working on something like that, precisely as you described it, because that's the missing piece in the puzzle. When it comes to data security, having run everything out of Europe with GDPR, running a data centers in Germany, these things, I guess I'm best prepared for, compared to maybe some competitors sitting somewhere in Alabama or so. So that's something that I want to see in AIPRM very soon. And a lot of users ask for that, and they will get it, because that's where we're going. Yeah? I just don't have all the features and all the details. Also because OpenAI is changing at a rapid rate, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on all the success and over 1 million users of your platform. It's incredible. It's just, yeah, it's an inspiration. So congratulations. And for our listener who wants to download and install the Chrome extension for AIPRM, where do we send them?
I just go to www.aiprm.com, and you should have a really big install for free button, which is maybe important to understand. All of the 1.6 million users can use all the prompts for free. You don't have to pay, you don't have to sign up. Only when we talk about more advanced features, you need to sign up. So we store data, and even more advanced features cost a couple dollars. But the majority of the users are using it for free still. And I don't plan to change that. I mean, if you have more than 3,000 prompts to select from, that's plenty. Yeah, that's it. AIPRM.com and install. And a second later, I think you just need to confirm one, do you really want to install this thing or so? And then just open ChatGPT and click some buttons. Yeah.
Yep. And also linkresearchtools.com. That's also an important tool for the tool set if you're doing SEO. I've been a big proponent of link research tools for, I don't know, well over a decade. So congratulations on that success too. All right. Well, thank you, Christoph. Thank you, listener. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Cemper, signing off.